Here come the 5 red lights ahead of the drivers. The green flag is at the back for the second running of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. It's lights out, and away we go, go, go. And there's Jackson down the inside of both Mercedes. Did he pass them? No. And yes, he did. Aiden Jackson has passed both Mercedes in the first 2 corners. What a start from Jackson on the soft tyres. As Aiden Jackson there is looking around the outside of Carlos Sainz. The Audi is battling with the Ferrari, and he's done it. What a move by Jackson. Jackson with a tremendous move, and Audi is right up there at the front. He's going to have the second opening DRS down the start-finish straight. Surely Aiden Jackson's not going to get third here, and he is, and it's comfortable. Aiden Jackson in the Audi Sport F1 car is running third. This is absolutely crucial for Audi with Nico Hulkenberg making no inroads on those ahead. And Carlos Sainz is diving down the inside. Perez has run wide. Perez has run wide in that corner, and Sainz has took full advantage. Now, this will be interesting because Carlos Sainz is definitely Ferrari is definitely better than the Audi Sport car, and Sainz blows past Aiden Jackson. Nothing you can really do about that. Oh, he's locked up. He's locked up, and there's a piece of debris there. Was there contact? I think I hit Perez there. And Sainz is going to the pits, so he lost an end plate of his front wing. He did. And he locks up, and he turns into Jackson there. And speaking of overtaking, Perez has passed Jackson. And that's rather academic. And there's another lock up there by Perez. And is there going to be contact? There is! Exactly the same scenario has happened to Perez. And Perez will be going into the pits. Last corner. And who is it going to be? Is it going to be Max and Charles over the line? Here they come. It's going to be Charles Leclerc who takes his second win of the season. Just Aiden Jackson gets the podium for Audi Sport F1 team in their second race after another astonishingly great ride. So here we are back down under for the first time since 2019 for the third round of the 2022 season. And there's been plenty of changes to the circuit since then. Most notably now, the layout is shorter with the removal of a chicane in the second sector. The chicane that led down to the kind of left-hand kink that led into another chicane, which drivers would then exit to use the second DRS zone. That chicane back there before then has now been taken out completely, and it's just a nice sweeping right and left section, which could have a DRS zone put in the future if it proves to be effective, which the drivers have been kind of testing in the practice sessions for that introduction of that DRS zone, but it hasn't been added yet. It'll be reevaluated for next year. There's also been a change of one of the corners, turn 13, or what used to be turn 13, which is now turn 11, which is now designed to be much tighter than it has in previous years. And that in particular has been catching a lot of the drivers out throughout the weekend. Unfortunately for Michael Schumacher fans, his lap record that he has held here since 2004 is now under threat. Not only are the cars much faster than the ones from 2004, but the lap record stood the test of time, even with the reprofiling of the cars in 2017. The 124, I believe, that was set by Schumacher in 2004 in that all-conquering Ferrari, withstood the test of time. But now with the circuit layout shorter, this could be the weekend where that last lap record of Schumacher's finally goes. And what a race we have in store. Once again, it's Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc on the front row, with Hamilton 4th, and I believe Aiden Jackson in the Audi is now 6th, so he improves his personal qualifying performance by getting into Q3, that is. As we stated in Saudi Arabia, his highest grid position is actually 4th, but of course he gained that through a plethora of grid penalties after being eliminated in Q2 in Monza. We've got Verstappen only second to Charles Leclerc, as Charles Leclerc took his second pole of the season, but Max was right there on the front row. Again, there was less than an attempt separating them, followed by Perez and Hamilton, and then Aiden Jackson up into 6th, I believe. He's coming off a brilliantly earned podium in Saudi Arabia, where we had the first real battle, of course, between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, with Charles Leclerc running away, well, not running away the victor, but coming out the victory. And as we look at the drivers' standings, Charles Leclerc, thanks to that win, got to increase his championship lead as Max finally got on the board for the first time this season. With them on the front row again, expect more battles. Audi Sport F1 team are absolutely buzzing right now because they got their first podium in only their second race with Aiden Jackson and move into fourth in the Constructors' Championship as a result. It was a rather below par race for Nico Hulkenberg, however, who only came really to light with his passing moves right at the end of the race after being stuck in a DRS train for the most part. Australia has a lot more overtaking opportunities with all the DRS zones it has, and the opportunity to add a fourth for next year really could be a bit overkill. And well, Aaron Henwood, we're really shaping up for a great championship battle here, and it's getting really interesting now. But Audi are really proving to be the dark horses, aren't they? Oh yeah, they have really come out of the box swinging, Aaron. I think they're starting to surprise us with just how well they have performed in the first two races. Aiden Jackson, of course, as you said, getting a very well-earned podium in Saudi Arabia, fighting off much faster cars in such as Sainz and Perez behind him. Even if the damage from both was self-inflicted, he still did a great job by keeping his car in third place, considering Sainz was coming through the field rather quickly before he got kind of sidetracked by a very valiant defence from Lewis Hamilton in the Grand Prix. And Perez lost his front wing later on in the race and then had to come back himself. It ended up being quite the battle between the last positions there after Jackson's third. But of course at the front, Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, they had a battle all race long, with Charles coming out the victor, as you said. And once again, it looks to be between those two for this race today as they are on the front row once again, this time with Leclerc getting pole over Verstappen, as you said. And Audi are in a much better position to get another double points finish maybe this weekend because Nico Hulkenberg has avoided a penalty, but he only starts 12th while Jackson is in 6th. So once again, Jackson is getting the most out of the machinery at the moment and is really getting the better of Nico Hulkenberg. That really has been the surprise of the season. What the other surprise is, and we mentioned this again, is the Alfa Romeo and Haas drivers, who I think the Haas drivers struggled to even get out of Q1. I don't think either of them did. I believe Schumacher is 18th and Magnussen is 20th. Haas are really not fulfilling their promise of pace at the moment. But Kevin Magnussen did get their first point of the season in Saudi Arabia, which is a much better time to be scoring points than they did last year. Of course, they had to wait till the French Grand Prix, in which Jackson got 1 point, thanks to a very valiant defence against Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, and the rest behind it that were much faster cars than the Haas last season. So they've already improved in that regard, but once again, struggling to get out of Q1, and the Alfa Romeos were struggling just as much, even though they did get slightly ahead of them. And I think they're still waiting for their first point of the season. The one real outlier in qualifying was Carlos Sainz, down in 13th due to incurring his own penalty, which I probably believe was an engine change, I think, because of course he would be around the top 3 normally, so I think he had to take a 10-place grid chop for a added component, let's say. Not really a component change as such, but adding a component which obviously Hulkenberg had to do with his entire power unit in Saudi Arabia. And once we, as we said, Hulkenberg in a much better position in 12th, which proves to be another good opportunity for Audi to really build on their 4th place positioning in the constructors' standings. They really are surprising with where they are at the moment. They've even had the better of McLaren and Alpine, which we really expected them to be further ahead of Audi at this point. But as we said, Jackson getting the most out of the machinery. Hulkenberg just got really unlucky in Saudi Arabia being part of a DRS train. But the track is much more open here, so there should be plenty more overtaking, as you said, with the DRS zones and the reprofiled section with the chicane now taken out. That makes this right into left much faster than it was back in 2019. And of course, the reprofiled corner at turn 11 really could prove some overtaking as well, as we said earlier, out of the DRS zone into that corner. So we could be seeing some moves there. And with the tightened section, it might actually favour inside passing. We have seen a couple of drivers trying on the outside in practice, however, so that could be quite interesting if that comes along. So yeah, the grid, and once again at the front. So let's do some race predictions here. I think Jackson is going to probably battle with the Mercedes again. He seems really stunted there. He could probably finish 3rd or 4th here if he gets the strategy right. But I think everyone is starting on the medium tyres. I don't think there's going to be an outlier in the starting tyres. We haven't really had a lot of running on the soft tyres in this race. Although I think tyre wear is not going to be as punishing with a couple of corners taken out in a shorter section. Or a shorter track, so to speak. So I think tyre wear won't be as much of a troublesome factor here as it probably has been in previous years. I am really worried about the lap record from Michael Schumacher though. It could finally go this year. As you said, it's withstood the test of time, but unfortunately, not only is it shorter, but the cars are faster. So this is the one last record that Michael Schumacher holds, and I think today it could finally go. We've seen times in qualifying in the 1:19s and 20s. Obviously, we have heavier fuel at the start, but I think since the fuel will come down at the end of the race, we may see someone go on to the soft tyres towards the end and maybe set a fastest lap in a case for a bonus point, which has been taken by, I think that's both been taken by Perez in the previous two races. I think he might have done, actually. I have to recap that. But yes, the 124 that has stood the test of time for Michael Schumacher could finally go this year. And for me, that's pretty much going to be a very sour thing to witness. But, you know, such as the cars this year, and even the driver caliber, as strong as Schumacher had it, of course. But, yeah, that's going to be rather unfortunate. As for the race result, I think it's going to be Verstappen, or actually Leclerc has definitely had the better of Verstappen this week, so I think Leclerc could take his third win in a row. The Ferrari just looks all out powerful today. Red Bull haven't really seemed at it, with Perez just getting ahead of Hamilton in like the final qualifying session as well. With Sainz out of position, that will really help Red Bull, because of course they only had one car finish in Bahrain rather. So I think that'll help them with Sainz being a bit out of position, but Ferrari are still already kind of so far ahead at this point. But of course it's only round 3. But we have to really keep an eye on what Audi are doing, because they are really surpassing all expectations. Currently sitting 4th, and with Jackson in the mix with the Mercedes, and if Hulkenberg gets the points, that fight for 3rd might just become a bit more interesting. We were expecting Mercedes to be fighting with Alpine and well, after the first race anyway. But we weren't expecting Alpine, McLaren and Mercedes to be really in the thick of it. Audi have thrown their hat into the ring entirely. And if this race goes their way, they could be right back into 3rd. They're only got a 6-point deficit to Mercedes, I believe, following the Saudi Arabian race. So I think it's going to be Leclerc again, because he just seems on top form at the moment. I think it's going to be a race-long battle between him and Verstappen. 3rd could go to anybody, as we witnessed in Saudi Arabia. Even Jackson could do it, as he proved there. But I think with Sainz out of position, that really increases Jackson's chances if he can get a good first lap like he did at the start of the Saudi Arabian race. But as we said, he's not really going for the outlier strategy today. He's actually starting on the mediums alongside pretty much everyone else, I believe. So I think it's going to be Leclerc from Verstappen again, but 3rd could definitely be between the same drivers that we had last year. And keep an eye out for Carlos Sainz coming his way through the field. As we know, Ferrari did really well coming through the field after Sainz lost the end plate of his front wing in Saudi Arabia. He came through really well, so I would keep an eye out for him. He could finish anywhere. Thank you, Aaron. So let's take a lap around this reprofiled Australian Grand Prix circuit then. Now down to 14 corners with the removal of the chicane and a reprofiled turn 11. Let's go on board with the McLaren of home favourite Daniel Ricciardo during a run in practice 1. Well, I believe I speak for everybody when I say this. It feels great to be back to the Australian Grand Prix for the first time since 2019. We're going to go a lap on board with home favourite Daniel Ricciardo, as the circuit has been drastically changed since its last appearance in 2019. I believe Daniel Ricciardo was at Renault the last time we were here as well, so much times have changed since then. We've got our teammate Lando Norris ahead of us, as we are in the first sector of a track that's been virtually unchanged since the circuit's introduction in 1996, where the first winner of this circuit was Damon Hill in the Williams. He went on to be world champion by the end of it. And now here is the big change to the circuit. No chicane here now, it's just a flat out blast with a little right and a little left. This has been tested as a DRS zone for possibly next year's Grand Prix. We'll have to know more after the evaluations from the officials and the race organisers after the practice sessions. It was tested in FP1 and FP2, and now we're back to familiarity, but not after a huge change at the now what is turn 11. A very much tighter corner than in previous years. Even Daniel Ricciardo had to lift off, maybe in the middle of the to the exit of the corner, but it could provide some overtaking opportunities in the Grand Prix. Now it's back to the familiarities. It's turn 13 and turn 14, and that is a lap of the Australian Grand Prix, the reprofiled circuit. Like I said, It's great to be back. Well, when it comes to a sporting event, the Australians always know how to put on a good show. But this weekend in particular has always had an extra element of frenzied spice to it, being the first Australian Grand Prix since 2019. Boy, it's good to be back here. Commentary from the third round of a 2022 Formula 1 season for the returning Australian Grand Prix is, of course, from Aaron Henwood. Thank you, Chaos, and a particular good morning to our British contingent who have decided to join us in this early hour. In the words of the great Kevin Durant of the NBA, you, the real MVPs, but Formula 1 prides itself on being all-inclusive, so we welcome you from wherever and however you're watching us, and we're very glad to have you here for the return of an absolute classic circuit. Formula 1 moved from Adelaide to Australia to open the 1996 season. It's been a staple on the calendar ever since. But 2022 has the circuit's biggest renovation change after missing for 2 years from 2020 and 2021. We're now down 2 corners to 14 and have 3 DRS zones and a reprofiled turn 11, with even veterans making mistakes, either braking too early for a chicane that isn't there or getting turn 11 wrong. It's fair to say that the playing field has been levelled for rookies like Yuki Tsunoda and Aiden Jackson in particular, who have never raced here at all. This race could literally throw up anything, and we're all for it. But when it came to crunch time in qualifying, Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen made no mistakes and locked out the front row for back-to-back races. And Max Verstappen seems very much back on form, and at least back in form in some regard after getting his first points on the board in Saudi Arabia. But of course the story of Saudi Arabia wasn't even him or Charles Leclerc in the end. It was Aiden Jackson scoring his first podium, and he's now bettered his personal qualifying position up to 6th. Audi are really starting to get into the thick of it, and I think the layout of the circuit and the changes to the circuit that has been catching people out has certainly helped them out. Let's look at the full grid for today's Australian Grand Prix then. Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll at the back, as probably to be expected. Alex Albon alongside Kevin Magnussen, 18th, 19th, Schumacher 18th behind Tsunoda, as Haas seem to get worse. Vettel is alongside Valtteri Bottas, and Guan Yu Zhou is alongside Carlos Sainz, who starts 13th because of an incurring grid penalty. That means he's behind Nico Hulkenberg, who starts 12th, and Daniel Ricciardo is 11th. Into the top 10 we go for Pierre Gasly, making his first top 10 start of the season behind Ocon. Lando Norris is alongside Fernando Alonso. Jackson, as we said, improving his personal position to now 6th behind George Russell. Lewis Hamilton is behind Perez, and as we said, less than a 10th once again, separating Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, as those two continue to be stuck together, not just on the racetrack, but before the race even starts, and in qualifying too. Everyone's starting on the medium tyres except for Alex Albon, who's decided to start on the softs in the Williams. And well, as we go on to the formation, that will probably go on board with Aiden Jackson, and we'll take this new layout in. It's pretty much as you were for the first sector, so this would be turn 3 for example. No real changes there. And into turn 4, which has always caught people out. Jackson has struggled with that one over the course of the weekend, and he has a great chance to add to his growing list of accolades in the 2022 season, scoring a points finish, then scoring a podium in the second race. What will he get here? Well, the win is probably a bit out of everybody else's range who isn't Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen, as those two seem to be pretty much tipped to run away at the front, but Audi's pace has certainly been surprising. They've been very level with Mercedes, and look at that, completely different second sector with the removal of that chicane. It makes it one of the fastest sections in the world of, well, Australian circuits, really. Australia obviously is very famous for its sports car series, but Formula 1 is a native habitat and has been since 1996, as you said. Well, in Melbourne Park, Melbourne anyway. The Australian Grand Prix has been running for well before that. We probably have to go back into the 80s to then back at the old Adelaide circuit before it was unfortunately axed from the calendar. Well, not axed, but changed, really. It was removed, like the last Grand Prix there was 1995 before moving here. And of course, the first race here had Damon Hill as a race winner and Martin Brundle having a very much scary accident at the time, and we've had similar ones to that. Who can forget Fernando Alonso doing a barrel roll of Esteban Gutierrez in the Haas back in, I believe it was 2016, I think it was. But Australia always throws out crazy races. Who remembers 2002 when Mark Webber scored a memorable 5th place and stood on the podium after Mika Salo had spun? The only real downside to that race was the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher running away with it, but behind him all sorts of carnage happened. It's nothing like the Australian Grand Prix. Here come the 5 red lights to start the newest page of a story after a 2-year absence. And it's lights out, and away we go, and Charles Leclerc has got a decent start. Verstappen already cuts across Perez, and it looks like we've all kind of settled the position. I think there was 3 wide. Jackson was going down the inside of someone there. I'm not sure if he passed the Mercedes this time. He didn't. No passing of him there. Charles Leclerc leads from Verstappen. Perez has moved up to 3rd ahead of Hamilton already. Hamilton's dropped to 5th. Jackson is having a look. There's 3 wide into turn 3. It's Gasly, and Gasly has passed both Fernando Alonso and Lando Norris into 7th. What a move from Gasly. He's on the medium tyres. How's Albon doing? Albon's had a great start on the softs. He's up to 17th. Alex Albon's had a great start. And the other Audi of Nico Hulkenberg has already fallen behind Carlos Sainz. Look for him coming through the field for 13th on the grid. And Charles Leclerc has led the race again from Max Verstappen. Sergio Perez, great start into 3rd, passing Hamilton already, who he fell even behind his teammate. Aiden Jackson is there. He's probably in DRS range, but DRS will not be open until the 2nd racing lap. Then there's a bit of a train behind Jackson, but it's because Gasly is the outlier up there in 7th. And what a start from Pierre Gasly. He was 10th on the grid, and he passed Ocon, Norris and Alonso in the first few corners of this race. And it was an absolutely stunning start from Albon as well. So 2 great winners were Albon and Gasly. Magnussen's dropped to 21st. What's happened to Kevin Magnussen? The Haas cars have been generally not great this weekend. Starting 19th and 18th, I believe, as Carlos Sainz is having a look down the inside of home favourite Daniel Ricciardo into 11th place. He was a Renault driver last we were here, and he had a pretty torrid start, didn't he? I think he retired at some point. I think he was late coming out of the pits as well. I think he had a problem before the race even started. But here he's P12 behind his teammate, and now Carlos Sainz will look to cut his way through the field. Charles Leclerc still leads if we go into a replay of the start. And again, it's another kind of bogged down moment for Charles Leclerc. He immediately cuts to the inside while Verstappen was busy holding off Perez and cutting across him to block his route to 2nd place. Charles Leclerc, I think he had a bit of a lock-up there into turn 1. He was very lucky to get away with that, I think. Let's have a look at the start from Verstappen's perspective. I think Charles definitely got the better of it. Verstappen moved to the centre and then moved to the outside, but Charles placing his car perfectly in the middle of the corner, allowing Verstappen no way to get through, and he had no real time left into turn 3. So here's how George Russell beat Hamilton here, and I think Perez was actually ahead of both Mercedes already, so there was me hyping up Perez and he was already there. But in any case, George Russell did beat Lewis Hamilton off the line by going down the outside there of turn 1. Now, if you remember on Lewis Hamilton's debut in 2017, 2007, my apologies, 2007, Hamilton made a name for himself by passing Alonso in the first corner. Looks like he's been not shown how to do it, but had a very similar feeling against him with his new teammate George Russell passing him. Now, of course, George Russell has already made his Mercedes debut long before we came here, when he subbed in for Hamilton at the Chequered Grand Prix of 2020. Yeah, in Australia, Hamilton gets what happened to him at the start. And gets passed by George Russell, who's now up to 4th. And we have Magnussen in the pits. And I'm assuming that's for a front wing change, because it usually is over the last couple of years. And it certainly is. So Kevin Magnussen has had a brush with someone. And hopefully we're going to replay that eventually. But we're still waiting for that. I wonder if we're going to get one. We probably are in just a moment. But yeah, Kevin Magnussen then. And that's had his race curtailed. Haas have really had it bad this weekend. They narrowly avoided the back row of the grid, really. And here is the replay then. So it's Kevin Magnussen who's following Sebastian Vettel, I assume that is, because he started ahead of Lance Stroll. And he outbrakes himself and hits Vettel in very close proximity to other cars. That was probably inevitable. That's pretty much what happened to Schumacher in Bahrain. And here's Jackson, and he's looking very close to Hamilton there. DRS has, of course, been enabled now, with it being available to use at the end of the second racing lap. Here would be the second side of the track. And I don't think he's going to be close enough to try and move against Hamilton in turn 11. And this could be Aiden Jackson's future employees ahead, which makes for a very interesting dynamic. What is he going to do? Well, he's probably going to race for himself to a degree and raise his stock. Not that he could probably raise his stock any higher, because he's done that over the last few years, of course. Formula 3 champion, Formula 2 runner-up to Mick Schumacher 2020. Race winner last year with Haas, the Italian Grand Prix, and now already a podium scorer for 2022 season, in a year where, when you spend a new team, normally they take a few races to kind of get into it. But Audi have been strong from the outset with a double-point finish and a podium for Jackson last time out in Saudi Arabia. Here we are on board with Carlos Sainz. The Alpine of Esteban Ocon locks up there. And I don't think it affected him too much, but it's not going to help his tyres. I'm surprised Carlos Sainz, either didn't go onto the softs to start this race, or didn't go onto the hards, considering where he was, and just make all the places back up later, because Ferrari does have a distinct advantage in terms of car performance this year, as Charles Leclerc has proven over the last 2 races, and Carlos Sainz did prove to a degree in Saudi Arabia, finding back from 4th. And here's Aiden Jackson, close enough to Lewis Hamilton to make a move into turn 11. It doesn't look like he's going to be close enough there. Of course, Hamilton is going to have the added benefit of DRS of his teammate George Russell. We've got a bit of a DRS train forming from behind Perez, as he's falling a second behind Max Verstappen, as Carlos Sainz goes round the outside of Esteban Ocon into turn 11. We were kind of hoping that would provide that kind of overtaking, and for Carlos Sainz it certainly has, and he's back up into the top 10 and already back up into the points by lap 4. Let's see how much he can make. Probably third is going to be his best bet here. Of course, he's got Aiden Jackson and Pierre Gasly, who are maybe out of position, although on Audi's evidence probably not. Jackson did finish third in Saudi Arabia on pace alone, even if he did have a little hand with Sainz and Perez having self-inflicted damage on themselves by collisions with Jackson in the final hairpin, or the final corner. And once again, Charles Leclerc just seems to have the legs of Verstappen at the moment. Proved to be the case in Saudi Arabia as well. It's not by much, but Charles certainly does have the edge this season so far in terms of his car. But Verstappen is certainly not letting him run away with it. Pierre Gasly still holding on to 7th place, as Carlos Sainz is now going to be a bit stuck in this DRS train. And this is being tested as a possible DRS zone for 2023. Let's go back to the front. And Jackson still not close enough to make a move on Hamilton, but let's be fair, Jackson is actually hanging on to the front runners, and he did it in Saudi Arabia as well. As long as that Audi has DRS, it's very competitive at the front. But he finished a long way behind Leclerc and Verstappen, and as Kevin Magnussen now really is hoping for a safety car, and his teammate Mick Schumacher isn't feeling any better, or fearing any better, should we say, as he's P19 behind his good pal Sebastian Vettel. Max Albon doing a stellar job in P17. And he wish he could probably be higher, but Max Albon certainly found his mojo. He may not score many points for Williams this year, but sadly. But he's certainly been very, very decent, Alex Albon, considering the car. Aiden Jackson is hanging on to these guys. It has to be said that the Mercedes may somewhat regret Audi sparing Audi some power units. And look how close Jackson is to Hamilton. He's right there. Is he going to try into turn 10? No. But if he gets a good launch out of turn 10, he might get a good position here. DRS. And Jackson takes to the outside. Surely not. On the 7-time world champion. And here he goes. And through goes Jackson. What a stunning move on Lewis Hamilton. That'll go down on his CV greatly, that will. What a move. And Hamilton must have been absolutely astounded to see that. What a move by Jackson. Absolutely brave. Has no regard for his future, surely. Because of course he's the Mercedes future prospect perhaps. But there, he was willing to risk it all. And even with Hamilton at DRS, and this is definitely Audi's strong suit. Look at, Hamilton giving it no space, almost no space at all. Look at that. Right around the outside, and Hamilton will not want to see that again. Look at this. To be fair, I think Hamilton knew he was there. He tried to cover him off, but look at that exit. Oh my, Aiden Jackson, no regard for anything. And he has arrived in Formula 1 this season. He didn't get to do a lot of overtaking last year in the uncompetitive Haas car, so to speak, even though if he did get a win in it. But this year, Aiden Jackson has arrived again. Well, he already had done, hadn't he? But that will go down as a very reminiscent of 2001, with Montoya passing Michael Schumacher. The stature was a little less for Schumacher at the time. He was only 4-time champion, or was he 3? I think he was 3. It was 2001, wasn't it? So it was 3-time champion. Hamilton's a 7-time world champion. So that stock for Aiden Jackson has just risen notches yet again. That's a move on a guy you wouldn't really think anyone would have a chance against. And Hamilton was always touted as he's never been passed on the outside a long, long time ago in his early years. But there, Aiden Jackson said, well, try this on for size. And he did. Oh my. I wonder what Mercedes will think about that. He's obviously their reserve driver for 2022. And right now, he's making his own case to be maybe number 1 in a different team. It's a very, very unusual situation for Jackson. Being a reserve driver and an actual active driver at the same time. It doesn't usually happen. Although, to be fair, Mick Schumacher has the same kind of feeling with Haas. He's also a reserve driver for Ferrari for 10 races over the course of the year. And a reserve for Alfa Romeo as well. Well, Aiden Jackson, wow. And Perez ran a little bit wide there. I wonder if that's going to give Jackson impetus to pass George Russell at turn 12, and not quite. Oh my word, well, if Jackson wants a Mercedes seat, he wants to stake his claim by beating them. I mean, I don't think there's any better way of making a claim than that. And like we said, Mercedes are going to be thinking, what did we do? Because, and Esteban Ocon has stopped on the track. That's a failure for the Renault power unit. So still more troubles there at Renault as George Russell and Sergio Perez decide to go into battle into turn 3. Nothing doing there, but they've got to be careful because Aiden Jackson's right there. And if you give him an opportunity, he will take it. And he flew off the track. He won't really gain anything out there on the grass, so I don't think he'll get a penalty or anything warning-wise for leaving the track. Because really, if you leave the track there, you're in the grass. And that's not really advantageous position. But, oh my word, that I had to step back from my monitor there for a moment, and now Jackson is looking at George Russell. And, oh man, I had to step back in awe of that move. Round the outside of Lewis Hamilton, who's no slouch. He's a 7-time world champion for a reason. And Aiden Jackson said, well, I'm just going to do that, I think he said. He certainly made a statement with that move, though. Oh. I think Hamilton was probably more surprised than us, to be fair. Well, Here's the problem that Esteban Ocon suffered. And it's probably simply a loss of power, it certainly is. And back to the good old days at Renault then. Red Bull will know all about that, unfortunately. They just don't seem to get it with their engines or power units at Renault. They've always had struggled in the turbo hybrid era, as George Russell is round the outside of Sergio Perez again. Round the outside of turn 3. And into turn 4, he's got the inside line. Will he take it? Yes. No. Possibly. Oh, Jackson will. Jackson has. Jackson's past George Russell. And now he's ahead of Pro Mercedes yet again. Well, that was all really caused by Perez. Really defending. Jackson saw an open opportunity and took it. And the Jackson highlight reel. It seems to be that over the course of this year. And even his early years for that matter. Well, it looked like George Russell was going to get Perez, and I think he was a bit oversteery out of turn 3. And I don't know what happened, but it was almost like George was maybe trying to avoid an accident and didn't think Jackson was going to be that fast into turn 4, or turn 5 rather. But he was. And now Jackson is within DRS range of Perez, and it's going to be another move round the outside, is it? And yes, it is. Aiden Jackson's done it again. I mean, to be fair, his Hamilton one was even more spectacular due to the fact that Hamilton had DRS ahead. And, well, this kid is making his own highlight reel at the moment. If you want to watch the highlights tonight or later today, Aiden Jackson is your ticket. Because right here, and again, like Hamilton, gives him just enough room on the outside. And Jackson takes it. What a move. And that'll probably be the last move Jackson does for the rest of the race, because he's 8 seconds behind the leading pair of Leclerc and Verstappen, who are well out in front here. Oh. But yeah, I had to step back from home auto there in complete awe, because Audi, let's say, have got a very good car when it comes to following in turbulent air, which is less of an effect this year with the new cars. But even with DRS of the car ahead, Audi are very competitive in that instance. They've got a very good car when it comes to following drivers in DRS trains. Jackson seems to get past. And he did there with Hamilton even having DRS ahead of him. Charles Leclerc continues to valiantly defend against Max Verstappen, as Carlos Sainz has moved up to 9th, and I think George Russell and Hamilton were in a battle there, but we've cut already to, and no, it's George Russell and Perez again. So now is George going to pass Perez? And it's the same move he tried last time, and I don't think he's come up again him again there. He probably needs to find somewhere else, but he needs to be mindful of his teammate behind him. As and Max Verstappen passing Charles Leclerc into turn 10 or turn 9, and he's gone through. That's no DRS on the Red Bull, and now he'll have it, because I'm sure he was behind Leclerc at the detection point. And now Hamilton and Russell are side by side. Oh my word, no team orders at Mercedes, I guess. Hamilton takes 5th. Let's have a look at see how Charles Leclerc got passed by Verstappen. This was unusual, because Leclerc had been a good solid half a second over Verstappen, but there, I guess Verstappen had to go for this. It's a very risky move. No DRS on the Red Bull there. He got through. So that may be proving the straight line speed of the Red Bull is no joke. So why couldn't he get the lead and run away in Saudi Arabia? I think it was because Leclerc's DRS probably did mitigate the advantage that Red Bull have over Ferrari in a straight line. And I'm wondering if there's something strange with the engine going on, because Charles Leclerc has now lost a second on Max Verstappen as they come into the pits for their stop in this race. Going on to another set of dry tyres, as is the rule. Red Bull usually like clockwork, and that is the case once again. And Jackson's also coming in. And third place man, Aiden Jackson, is in. let's see where he comes out. Should come out in the top 10 rather comfortably. Hamilton also came in. So the likes of Perez and Russell went on. They were the only two of the leaders who went on for an extra lap. Now this is interesting. Nico Hulkenberg is ahead of his teammate, but he has to stop. So what will Audi do? They'll probably just tell Jackson just to hang back a bit and give Hulkenberg some space. He's got to pin a lap or two anyway. But he had his hands full with Zhou Guan Yu. There, Aiden Jackson in a very understeery car. It's not so bad here, the understeer for Audi, but it's certainly a factor that they need to really focus on. They say once we get to the European portion, we'll start bringing some massive upgrades to the team, and Audi can do that even with the cost cap, because they have the biggest cost cap of all the teams, being a new team of course. As we said in Saudi Arabia, the lower down the standings you are, the bigger cap you have for the next season. Trying to keep it fair and give those lower down the grid a chance to catch up and compete. Sadly, it hasn't really worked for Williams or Haas yet, but it's certainly made a difference as George Russell and Sergio Perez make their stops, as Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc go on with relative ease. In comes Hulkenberg and Carlos Sainz. Let's watch the Audi Sport crew go to work, and it's relatively simple. Although I think he has lost a place to Lando Norris, unfortunately, Hulkenberg rather. And I've noticed that Audi seem to be wearing the wrong logo. I wonder if that's a glitch with the game. That's something I've actually just noticed just now. So that's rather unusual. We saw their logo in the Paddock Pass interview at pre-season testing. It certainly wasn't that. So I think there's a glitch with the game somewhere. But in any case, here we go. Audi will have to sort that out amongst themselves. So Lewis Hamilton has he jumped Perez? No, he was probably ahead of Perez, but in any case, he's up to 4th now. So George has actually lost out to Perez, even though he did get ahead of him at some point. And looking at the times here, looking at this, Aiden Jackson is the fastest man in the first two sectors. He's going for the fastest lap here. On the hard tyres, that would be very impressive. Let's just stay on board here. And he's going to do it. He's going to set the fastest lap. What is it? A 1:23.7. That beats the record from Michael Schumacher. So that's that lap definitely gone now. And the last of his, one of the last few records Michael Schumacher has left. He wasn't really a fastest lap kind of guy though. He wasn't really Sebastian Vettel, where they like to have the Grand Slammer every weekend. Even though Michael Schumacher relatively took those with complete ease, especially in 2004 and 2002. But the one thing Michael Schumacher still does have to his very impressive resume, let's say, is that he is still the only man in Formula 1 to complete a Formula 1 season on the podium in every single race. And that was back in 2002. So he is still the only man to have 100% podium finishes over the course of a season. Now, obviously, that was back at a time where Formula 1 only had 16 or 17 races at a time. This year we have 22, with the exclusion of the Russian Grand Prix, of course. And the seasons are much longer. And reliability is certainly not more of a concern here these days, with these power units being very efficient, not just in fuel. We are looking to be zero net carbon by about 2030, I believe. That's the target. So reliability is not really as much of a concern as it used to be back then. And of course, even back then, you know, you had unlimited engines that you could change at every Grand Prix if you wanted, and Ferrari definitely made use of those. Not so much the case these days, of course. You have to make all parts of a power unit last a certain number of races. If you exceed that limit, then you can start incurring grid penalties, as Carlos Sainz and Nico Hulkenberg will tell you. They've had power unit component changes lead to penalties this season already in the third race. It's not the greatest of looks, but I guess with Ferrari, they have such a car advantage. They could probably afford to do that once or twice. Having said that, Carlos Sainz is only going to be about 7th here. He's being held up by Alonso. And he'll have DRS as he gets a very good, decent exit out of turn 10. Here we go down turn 11 again. And then even Sainz is taking the Jackson playbook. And he's made that stick. So turn 11, reprofiled, serving its purpose for all the overtaking. Jackson's going faster. Jackson is consistently in the 123s. I think he might have even just gone a 10th below that fastest lap. He could really keep that now. Now that he said it, and the hard tyres are pretty much, well, not past their best, but have been relatively scrubbed, let's say, on the leaders of Verstappen and Leclerc. Will they go any faster? Will Jackson have his first fastest lap of his career? There's a right old scrap going on for 4th between Hamilton, Perez and George Russell, although I think Perez has now fallen off the back of Lewis Hamilton, so I think he might have had a lock-up or something somewhere. Here's Nico Hulkenberg in P12. What must he be thinking? His teammate has definitely got a great car underneath him, and it proves that Audi have got a great car. But Hulkenberg just doesn't seem to get out of DRS trains as well as Jackson does. So reviewing the top 10 with about 11 laps to go. Max Verstappen is your leader from Charles Leclerc by over a second. And he's pretty much pegged Leclerc. So I wonder if Leclerc's got a slight issue brewing in that Ferrari power unit. Because Leclerc definitely had the edge over Verstappen in the early part of the race. So maybe it's true what we've been thinking over the last year or so, that Red Bull run very efficiently in clean air. But because Leclerc had DRS to keep him with Verstappen in Saudi Arabia, they weren't really able to utilise it. And Red Bull is just so good in a straight line. We're not being followed by other cars. It's kind of like what the Mercedes used to experience in the 2017, 2018, 2019 seasons, where Mercedes didn't like following other cars. I mean, it has been less of an issue over the last couple of seasons, but we had drastic changes to the cars, and even some other. Obviously, Mercedes had the DAS system in 2020, which made it very efficient in that regard. Aiden Jackson is he's being left behind, but not by much. He's only 7 seconds behind Charles Leclerc, and is absolutely flying in that car at the moment. So I wonder if Charles had a problem at some point, because Jackson was. Oh, and there's Alex Albon. Oh no, that's unfortunate. Alex Albon is out of this race, and that's a shame. Alex Albon was having a great time of it at the start. Moved up to 17th on the soft tyres. And now we've got Perez and Russell still having side-by-side battles on the track. These new era of technical regulations have certainly delivered at the moment on their promise of closer racing and being able to follow each other for longer periods. It's certainly been the case. Definitely proved it in Saudi Arabia as well. And we're starting to really see the effects of it. Aiden Jackson is definitely providing the overtaking by himself on that regard. And the Williams doesn't really slow to a stop. He pulls it to the side of the track. Very well done by Alex Albon to avoid any possible safety car usage. And it wasn't called out. And on we go to lap 21. And Carlos Sainz, and he's catching Perez. Carlos Sainz is catching these two ahead. Ferrari definitely has it in the power department over Mercedes and Red Bull powertrain, which is essentially Honda at the moment. Pierre Gasly, unfortunately, is falling away a bit now, although he does have a 3-second lead over Lando Norris. Valtteri Bottas in 11th as Alfa Romeo continue to draw up zeros in the points column at the moment. What is going wrong at Alfa Romeo? Still not able to get any points on the board. Although Bottas, to be fair, was starting lower down than usual. But they've certainly not been there, Alfa Romeo, or Haas for that matter. They've been probably the two most disappointing teams of the season so far, because they have the C-spec power unit from Ferrari, and the only team making use of it is Ferrari themselves. Hulkenberg just does not seem to get clear of any DRS trains. Once he's caught in it, he doesn't seem to really make the inroads. Jackson does. And Jackson has probably settled for third now because he's lost out a bit to Verstappen and Leclerc. So it looks like he's settling for third. Not that anyone can blame him.
Guys, something's wrong. I don't want to alarm you, but I think the battery might be deploying by itself. What's happening? Sit tight, Aiden. It seems to be a malfunction. We can work on a fix from here. It's not terminal. Keep pushing and just sit tight. We're on it. Okay, copy.
And Jackson is reporting issues with the ERS then, and it does seem lower, doesn't it? Well, Jackson has battery issues, but Audi say it's not terminal then. That's interesting. I think hopefully we'll hope Jackson can make it. He's up for third at the moment. Still has the fastest lap, by the way, as well, so Jackson might even get an extra bonus point for the fastest lap. Just about a few laps to go. And concern maybe for Audi and Jackson. Going on board with him here. Certainly looks like it's used up more battery than Jackson would like. Not that it matters too much, I guess. As the director cycles through the cameras. So Jackson has possible issues with the Audi F1 car then. That could certainly be unfortunate if he drops out of the race from there. Well, at the front, Max Verstappen has it comfortable to grab his first win of the season. Because Charles Leclerc cannot get within a second. I think if Ferrari had DRS, it'd be a very different story. Well, Kevin Magnussen had his race curtailed on lap 1 or 2 when he touched with one of the Aston Martins, which I believe was Vettel. And speaking of Vettel, he has Mick Schumacher behind him. Aston Martin, Haas and Alfa Romeo have definitely been the disappointments of 2022 so far. And we say Alfa Romeo because of the fact that they've scored 0 points in the first 2 or 3 races. To be fair, Bottas is on for a point at the moment, if he can pass Lando Norris, which he should be able to do here. One thing we've definitely noticed with DRS is this season is that lead cars usually don't get swept past. So maybe with the new technical regulations, DRS has been adjusted to not make it so powerful that the lead car can't defend against it. If they do that, what's the purpose of it? Would be my question. Sainz has fallen off the back of George Russell now. He was catching them at one point.
Okay, update for you, Aiden. The ERS issue should be resolved. The car should be working as intended till the end of the race now. Can you just double check that for us? Okay. Yeah, seems good now. Alright, Aiden, you're doing fantastically well managing the problem, mate. Turn the engine down now. Let's make sure we get this car to the end just in case it is a recurring issue. Don't worry about behind you. Hamilton is 7 seconds back. We should be okay. You're also the fastest lap right now. You're kidding? No way. Fingers crossed we can keep it. Copy.
I even think Jackson's surprised that he got the fastest lap there. And he's still holding on to it, you know. A review of the top 10 with about 5 laps to go then. Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Aiden Jackson, both Mercedes. Carlos Sainz has got ahead of Perez now. Alonso, Gasly and Lando Norris, with Valtteri Bottas not able to make inroads even with DRS to his advantage. And Daniel Ricciardo not really getting much higher than 11th today, unfortunately for him. And this Australian crowd that have stuck around for this first Australian Grand Prix since 2019, and it started out as an absolute cracker. It's kind of fallen a little bit into a bit of a procession, but such is the way it is. The front runners, Red Bull and Ferrari in particular, do have the strongest cars of the 2022 season. There's no doubt about it, but Audi are really the outliers here, because they definitely have potential which Jackson is fulfilling before they even reach it, such as Jackson's talent. And I think we have to start putting Jackson in the discussion, maybe, of a future world champion. He will need probably a bit of luck to get there though, because Max Verstappen in particular, when he's on it, and when he has the car underneath him, definitely, as he proved last year, is the one to succeed legends like Lewis Hamilton and carry on after him. Charles Leclerc is another one. I think we have to put Aiden Jackson in that discussion, because he is certainly outperforming that Audi, when Nico Hulkenberg, not his fault mind you, Nico Hulkenberg is not getting anywhere over the last 2 races. It is only race 3 though. It's no knock on Hulkenberg. The man is one of the best midfield drivers of all time. Definitely one of the most inconsistency, and the way his career has gone mostly is just through to bad luck. But he's landed such a good seed at Audi and has such a good car. I think when the upgrades start coming through for Audi, Hulkenberg will definitely be better. He just needs to ride this out and just wait for the updates to come in. It's obviously going to make Aiden Jackson even faster, because he's third at this very moment. 3 laps to go. And Max Verstappen certainly has the legs of the Ferrari in this one, as he continues to lead from Charles Leclerc and Aiden Jackson, who is settled for third. And Audi have turned the car down and saving the engine, which they had to do with Hulkenberg. If you remember, Hulkenberg in Bahrain had to nurse the engine to the end, so maybe we hope that there is not a more serious issue in the car of Aiden Jackson. We hope not. Charles Leclerc. Strange that he was passed by Verstappen. He seemed to have the legs on him for the majority, and he got passed in a non-DRS zone and hasn't really recovered since. But Charles Leclerc does have almost a race plus win lead over Max Verstappen. I think it'll be 24 points between these two at the end of this race if things stay as they are, because the TV has been so slow in this race. It seems that he's about to be lapped And that was with Kevin Magnussen making a pit stop. So Latifi has certainly not had a good one this weekend. I wonder if he's got a problem in that car, because it's just strange how he's fallen behind Magnussen and he had to pit at the start of his race. And by the end, Magnussen's now ahead of him. Not been a great race for Haas at all. 17th and 19th at the moment. They may have that point with Magnussen in Saudi Arabia, but today Haas have been nowhere. And Alfa Romeo has been a little better, but still not going to go at points with Valtteri Bottas, as Latifi moves aside to let the race leader through. Kind of gets back on the racing line to not block Leclerc though, as we head on to the final lap. And Latifi really should have stayed out of the way. And that's just curtailed Leclerc's efforts even more. But Verstappen has had his way in this race. And I would say that Red Bull are probably still a little bit behind Ferrari overall, but they've definitely had the best car in a straight line today. And here, Leclerc passed it. Did I see a raindrop there on the camera? It's not going to matter. It's the last few meters of the race. Max Verstappen has comfortably won this race. He stuck with Leclerc as long as he could, and then used his straight line advantage past Leclerc in that new section. And now, Max Verstappen, round turn 11, where we have seen all the overtaking today, particularly with astounding moves from Aiden Jackson. Max Verstappen at turn 13 to turn 14. He's the fastest man in the last two sectors. Please don't tell me he's going to take the last lap from Jackson on the final lap. Here he comes. He's going to do it, I'm sure. Oh, he did. Max Verstappen wins and takes the fastest lap of the last by a 10th there to Jackson. Oh. Wow. Oh, but another podium. Audi Sport F1 team again. Aiden Jackson yet again, the driver of the day and the star of the show. But Max Verstappen is your winner.
Aiden Jackson, that is back-to-back podiums, my friend. Very well done once again today, buddy. Unfortunately, Max did beat on that last lap for the fastest lap bonus point by just a 10. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. He is the pole champion and that Red Bull is fast. Thank you once again, boys. This car is fantastic. Let's keep pushing. Now we're in the European season. Let's start bringing it to these guys. Sentiment very much shared, Aiden. Copy that.
Jackson is raring to go for the European season. And with Audi, if they bring those updates, oh my, these two might have to watch out. Well, what a cruel twist. Max Verstappen, such is his meaning to grab all the stats he can, very much like Sebastian Vettel used to do in his time at Red Bull. Such as he wanted to do that, he took the fastest lap from Jackson on the last lap by a 10th. That, even I'm deflated by that. That's deflating. But once again, Audi Sport just continue to defy the odds. Another 15 points for Aiden Jackson on the scoreboard. Hulkenberg, a big 0 again. Not that his fault, mind you, but wow. Well, it's only really because Jackson just has no fear against even his future employees. What must they be thinking? They gave Audi power units. They gave him their reserve driver. And for the second race in a row, their reserve driver has finished ahead of them. And now is ahead of Russell by 10 points in the Drivers' Championship. Well, that's a sub-story all its own. Charles Leclerc, 24 clear of Verstappen, less than a race win away now. But where was he today? Charles Leclerc just never really recovered in the second half of the race. Red Bull had it covered, really. And the only mover being AlphaTauri going ahead of Haas and Alfa Romeo with their first points of the year. Alfa Romeo continue to be rather disappointing, to be fair. Ferrari lead by 23 ahead of Red Bull. And, well, Max Verstappen, he didn't have it all his own way, but that second stint was absolutely vital, as Charles Leclerc never really recovered after being passed, with no DRS assistance, mind you. But once again, it's Audi Sport F1 team who steal the headlines, with Jackson making sensational passing manoeuvres. When those updates come, Audi Sport might just be fighting with these two. These two better enjoy the advantage while they have it, because Audi Sport are coming. We'll see for the start of the European season in San Marino or Imola when Formula 1 returns for round 4.